Welcome and thank you everyone for attending Vitelli's first webinar in the UK. I'm Danielle Starr, Global Marketing and Communications Manager for Vitelli. With us today, we have John Cochran, Dieter Prinz, and Carly Jarvis. Together, they will be discussing the IVF technologies brought to you by Vitelli. Today's live session is going to consist of 30 minutes of presentation, followed by 15 minutes of live questions. Throughout our presentation today, if you have any questions, please feel free to navigate to the bottom of your screen and ask those questions in the Q&A button. We will do our best to get to all questions at the end of our session. However, if we don't get to your question, we'll be sure to follow up with you via email. In addition, if you have any additional questions after the webinar, you can reach us at info@vitelli.com. At the conclusion of this webinar, we are also going to give all of the UK participants one embryo free. So please keep an eye on your chat button as we'll be dropping a link in there as well. We'll give you more details on that at the end. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to John and we are going to get started this evening.
Thank you, Danielle. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome to the large number of participants joining us for our first Vitelli UK live webinar entitled Redefining Reproduction. My name is John Cochran, International Business Development Manager, and today, with the assistance of my Vitelli colleagues, we look forward to providing you with an introduction and first-hand insight to Vitelli UK and our innovative IVF processes, which are soon to be available in the United Kingdom. So during the next 30 minutes, we were delighted to share with you some background on the ownership of the Vitelli Group of companies, Vitelli UK, and also our team will talk you through our innovative IVF processes, including ovum pickup, in vitro fertilization, recipients, and finally, UK Pacific pricing and how you can get started working with Vitelli UK in the United Kingdom. Vitelli Group is a UK-owned business and part of the Wheat Sheaf Group of companies. The Wheat Sheaf Group are an international investor in food and agriculture who have a firm focus on innovative business models and technologies that deliver affordable and safe food that is sustainable for both human health and the health of the planet and allows producers to thrive. The Vitelli Group is a precision livestock company that's firmly focused on accelerating genetic advances in bovine technology. As this slide depicts, the Vitelli Group comprises of three forward-looking and innovative businesses working together under the Vitelli umbrella that combined provide the technology to convert individual animal phenotypic and genotypic performance data into genetic progress. However, at a significantly faster rate than has been previously possible. The first of the companies I'd like to introduce within the Vitelli Group is GrowSafe. GrowSafe is the global leader in bovine feed efficiency, recording, and through its integrated hardware and software analytics platforms, is able to provide highly accurate feed intake and phenotypic data to livestock producers, and therefore enabling them to make greater informed management decisions within their livestock operations. The second business part of the Vitelli Group is Sonomics. Sonomics is a revolutionary insights platform that has the capability to process thousands of data sets and analyze large-scale phenotypic and genotypic data with a high level of accuracy. Finally, Vitelli IVF, who we are focusing on tonight and providing further insight into, is a rapidly expanding international in vitro fertilization business Since its launch less than half a decade ago, Vitelli currently operates 6 large-scale commercial labs in North America and additionally labs in Latin America. And finally, we are also in the process of opening additional labs in a further 3 continents, including the United Kingdom. Having developed our in-house proprietary media and through the development of our unique and successful IVF protocols that excludes the use of hormones, or in short, FSH, Vitelli have been able to replicate its impressive results across our multiple lab locations. Oh, slight technical issue here. Just bear with me a second. Not sure why that's happened. There we are. Sorry, we're back on track. So Vitelli are truly a global business. We have 17 countries where Vitelli have either labs or feed efficiency satellites, joint ventures. So we are, I think, in 4 different continents at this point in time. Today, Vitelli have collected oocytes from over 30 breeds of dairy and beef cattle. And we have produced over 125,000 embryos worldwide for our customers. So now moving to the UK, I'd just like to introduce you to our UK lab location, which is based in Dumfries in Scotland, just south of the north of the English border, central located for a good road network, and also it will serve all of the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland. It's a new building which has been specifically fitted inside in accordance to the Vitelli specifications and equipped with state-of-the-art lab equipment. So before we move on to the IVF process, I'd just like to introduce some of the Vitelli team. Myself, John Cochran, as I said earlier, I'm International Business Development Manager, responsible for all the countries outside the Americas. I'm from a livestock farming background and I've over 25 years in the genetics industry. Heading up our team in the Reese is our team-led lead veterinarian, Dieter Prins. Dieter is an MRCVS qualified vet. He has 16 years experience as a vet, including 13 years in the United Kingdom. Dieter will be carrying out OPU, IVF, and ET veterinary responsibilities for Vitelli. So you look forward to meeting Dieter going forward in the future. Heading up our lab is Carly Jervis. Carly has over 14 years lab experience and is an experienced team leader. And Carly herself is MSc level educated. And you'll be hearing from Carly later in this presentation. An integral important part of Vitelli that has allowed us to open multiple labs across the world are our Vitelli expansion team. So I'd just like to introduce a couple of our international expansion team members. This is Nina Casagrande. So Nina is also a veterinarian, lab manager, and an expert in IVF. She carries out the training for local staff for IVF labs worldwide. So wherever we open labs around the world, we provide training and technical support. Nina is also involved in strategic planning, feasibility, and troubleshooting, and has been involved in large-scale embryo production projects in both Brazil and Russia. The second member of our Vitelle expansion team is Thomas Reese. Thomas is also a veterinarian and is a bovine reproduction IVF expert. In his career, Thomas has performed over 35,000 OPUs. And Thomas carries out the training of local staff for IVF labs worldwide, specifically on oocyte recovery, OPU. Thomas also assists with strategic planning, feasibility, and troubleshooting, and has been involved in large-scale embryo production projects in Brazil, Russia, and the USA. So why IVF? Well, I'd just like to hand you over to my colleague Dieter, who will talk you through our innovative IVF processes. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for the introduction. As John said, I'm Dieter. I'm the veterinary team leader for Vitelli UK, and I will talk you through some of the processes that are involved with IVF. Next slide, please, John. Okay, so IVF, strictly speaking, IVF is in vitro fertilization. But when we talk about IVF, we normally mean the whole process of collecting oocytes out of the follicles of the ovaries of donor cows in a process called OPU. Those oocytes will then be fertilized in the lab, which we call in vitro fertilization or IVF. And the resulting embryos will then be transferred into recipient cows or heifers. So that whole process of OPU, IVF, and ET, we normally understand to be IVF. So why would you do IVF? So IVF, basically you will create on a herd level quite an astonishing genetic progress, a fast genetic progress, and it is basically that is mainly achieved because we can shorten the generation interval quite dramatically. Instead of having one offspring of one cow every 9 months, we can have multiple offspring of a cow within a year. And if you were comparing the genetic progress rate between IVF and AI, when we look on the right-hand corner to this graph, you can see that you can achieve within one generation of IVF the same genetic progress as that would normally take you 5 generations with conventional AI. Okay, next slide. So when we look at a different graph, if you consider that your herd represents this bell-shaped curve, and most of your animals will be performing quite averagely, but you have also quite a small percentage of your cows that are performing exceptionally well, either phenotypically or genotypically. So these exceptionally well performing animals, these donors, we are going to be using for IVF procedures, and the resulting embryos will then be implanted into the rest of your animal. And by doing so, we will create quite a substantial genetic progress. Yes, John? By breeding of these donor animals, these exceptionally well producing animals, the average of your next generation will be performing according to the average of these exceptionally well donor animals. And your next generation, if we select those exceptionally well performing animals from your next generation again, we can move your average performance in the whole herd across the line in an increasing way over several generations. Okay, and because of IVF having such a good result, and because it's become more cost effective and quite easily to be implemented on farm, IVF has overtaken the normal classic flush ET since about 2016 on a worldwide scale. And as you can see that the number of embryos produced by conventional flush ET has gone down in favor of the production of embryos through IVF. And we expect this to be continuing in the future. So what does IVF involve? Well, most companies will use a hormone called follicle stimulating hormone that needs to be injected multiple times a day over several days at various dosages before you can actually start OPU. These multiple injections require frequent donor handling, and frequent donor handling is not always good for the animal, and above all, it requires quite a lot of time for your management to get these injections into an animal. So, however, at Vitali, yes, John? At Vitali, we've chosen not to use FSH. Our protocols and our equipment, both in the field and in the lab, together with the skills of our team, allow us to have very good results, comparable or even better as the majority of IVF companies in the world. So for us, we've chosen not to use FSH because our results are good and exceptional in a lot of cases for us to choose not to use FSH. By not using FSH, we don't have to inject donor animals. And by not injecting donor animals, we can make the whole process a little bit more cost effective. It requires less handling of your donor animals. Because we don't have to wait for the results of the injections, we can do quite regular OPU sessions, so oocyte collections. By not using any additional hormones, the whole process is much closer to the natural hormone cycle of an animal. And of course, we can collect from pregnant animals. So to do OPU or open pickup, the first part of IVF, there's a couple of requirements that we need. We need, of course, donor animals that are going to provide us with the oocytes to make embryos from. So these donor animals need to be carefully selected. The selection needs to be preferably done based on correct data. This data can be provided by Vitali through their GrowSafe and Synomics systems, but this data can also be provided by your own genomics, your estimated breeding values, or your personal choice. These donors, of course, need to be healthy. They need to be declared healthy. They need to be in a good body condition. They need to have fairly good nutrition with sufficient minerals. And you can opt for these animals to be either vaccinated or be declared or tested free of certain diseases that might interfere with appropriate results. The other thing that we need when we do OPU, the first step of IVF, would be the facilities on farm. We solely do at the moment on farm collections of oocytes. So we come to your farm. However, because this is such a sophisticated procedure, there are some certain requirements that we need to actually be able to collect these oocytes through the OPU techniques. So we need a draft-free enclosed area. We need a race and a crush that is clean. We need plenty of space around the crush for us to be able to manipulate our equipment and to provide the right techniques. We need some animal handlers to help us to get the animals into the crush for us to proceed with the procedures. And of course, we need some electricity to be able to plug our equipment in. So, and then the equipment itself, we use quite a sophisticated ultrasound machine. So all these techniques are done through an ultrasound machine where we can visualize the oocytes on the ovaries inside the donor cows. These ovaries are then punctured with a little needle to be able to aspirate the follicles to collect the oocytes. These oocytes are being sucked out of the whole system with a little vacuum pump, and these oocytes are then collected into a warm system to be able to replicate the body temperature as close as possible. And of course, we need some epidural anesthetics and cleaning equipment to be able to offer this procedure at the most cleanly possibility. Okay. So now we'll be showing you a video of how OPU works. So this is the ultrasound guide that is being inserted into the vagina towards the ovaries. The ovaries are then manipulated in front of the ultrasound guide. This ultrasound guide contains a very small needle where we can aspirate the follicles. The follicles are represented with these little black dots on this artificial ovary. And one by one, we aspirate these follicles to obtain the oocytes. These follicles are on the surface of the ovaries. And as soon as we've done one side of an ovary, we manipulate the ovary and we potentially rotate the ovary so that we can visualize another area of the ovary for us to be able to collect these follicles at the surface of the ovary. So the needle doesn't penetrate the full ovary, but the needle stays fairly superficial on top of the ovary, just enough to collect the follicles that contain the oocytes. So when we do OPU, you will probably be wondering, what kind of results can I expect? Well, these results are liable to many variables. On an individual level, these variables are mainly related with the cow itself and with the management that this cow is under. On a herd level, we can obtain really good results with the number of oocytes and improving your genetic progress, because we can, with this technique, include animals that normally would not be considered suitable for traditional AI or even ET. So we can collect oocytes from heifers. We can collect oocytes from pregnant cows. As long as we can reach the ovaries next to the uterus, we should be able to collect oocytes from these pregnant cows. We can collect oocytes from cows that have only been calved for 15 days. We can collect oocytes on quite a regular basis, every 7 or 14 days or 21 days. If we obtain a lot of oocytes from one particular animal, we can split this oocyte collection and have these oocytes fertilized by semen of multiple bulls. So on a herd level, we can obtain quite a number of oocytes, because we can include animals that normally you would not be considering for reproductive techniques through AI or possibly even embryo transfer, embryo flush. Okay, I will now hand you over to Carly, who will be talking about what to do once we've done the OPU and once we've collected the oocyte, and she will be in charge of that process.
Thanks, Dieter. So I'm Carly. I provide the lab support for the IVF process. So the next process after OPU will be searching. It's called searching because we need to search for the oocytes in amongst that OPU sample. So the first stage of this is to wash away any potential contaminants, so that we can then see the oocytes under the stereoscope. A stereoscope is like a 3D microscope. We can look at the oocytes and we can grade them, viable, unviable, and make any other observations that might be useful. We're then going to count these oocytes per donor and put the oocytes inside an individual vial of in vitro maturation media. So this short video showed you some of the practicalities of the searching process. So the OPU sample is poured into that yellow filter. All the liquids are always kept at 38.5 degrees. The oocytes are too large to fit through the gauze of that filter, so they sit in the filter. We then turn the filter upside down and wash the filter to get the oocytes into a clean Petri dish. And once again, the clean Petri dish is sitting on a heated plate. The oocytes can be seen with the naked eye, so we can double check that we don't miss any at this stage. The next stage is to further wash these oocytes with Vitelli's wash media, which is what's happening at the moment. So he's got the oocytes inside a drop of wash media, looking down the stereoscope to see what he's doing, and then placing these oocytes from one donor into an individual vial of in vitro maturation media. This maturation media helps the oocytes mature, ready for fertilization 24 hours later. So this searching process needs to occur as soon as possible after OPU. So Vitali have purchased a commercial vehicle shown on the left there, and we're having it professionally converted. Behind the driver's bulkhead will be a center section, which is going to be my laboratory. This is a clean, warm, free from draft, out of direct sunlight environment, which is what is required to keep those oocytes healthy. Behind a second bulkhead will be the field area where the dirty equipment that Dieter has used on the farm will be kept. All that we need to be self-sufficient is to be able to plug into your mains electricity supply. So after OPU and searching, 24 hours later, we're back at the laboratory for day 0, which is in vitro fertilization. This is where we introduce the sperm to the eggs. The rest of the timeline is a cascade of washing away the byproducts of development, providing the correct media and the correct environment for continued development of these embryos. By day 6, we can look down the stereoscope and we see like a raspberry-like structure, and we can predict how many viable embryos we will have available, either for fresh transfer on day 7, or we have a 3-day window to select the embryos at the correct stage to freeze down, which is possibly more convenient for yourself. So from day 0 onwards, we are back at our permanent laboratory, which in the UK is based in Dumfries. As you can see, the equipment is brand new, state-of-the-art equipment. What's really interesting is that the make and model of these equipments are exactly the same in every Vitelli laboratory across the world. And what's important and useful about this is that the standard operating procedures are exactly that. The methods that every Vitelli laboratory uses are the same. Couple this with the ability to collect data at each stage of our process, it makes problem solving a lot easier and a team effort. Also, the development and implementation of new methods is a lot easier because we're all starting from the same starting place. The semen is down to yourself to choose the bull that's most appropriate for your breeding plan. But what's important to note is that the return using the IVF process for 1 straw of semen is a lot greater than that from using AI. 1 straw of conventional semen can produce embryos from 10 to 20 donors, as opposed to 1 straw per cow in AI. If you choose to predetermine the gender of your offspring by using sex semen, 1 straw can produce embryos from 5 donors. So you're really maximizing your return on your investment on your semen straws. What is important to note is that we must have the semen before we start the process, because once we start, we can't stop. As I said earlier, on day 7, we can provide the embryos for fresh embryo transfer if that's the method that you choose, as long as you have recipient cows in the correct stage of their reproductive cycle. Or you can choose to freeze the embryos down. So we have a 3-day window to select the embryos that are at the correct stage of development for freezing. Vitali has produced a media that minimizes the cell damage from the freezing process, and also the procedure of direct thaw and direct transfer of these embryos is very easy and can be done by your embryo transfer technician. You don't need a laboratory technician such as myself there for this procedure. Over to Dieter again to talk a little bit more about these recipient cows.
Thank you, Carly. So once we've made these embryos in the lab and we've either got them ready, fresh or frozen, these embryos, of course, need to go into a recipient. These recipients are chosen by you, and they can be either heifers or cows. If you choose to use heifers as recipients, they need to be approximately 60 to 75% of the mature weight. They need to be fed checked and declared healthy and of a correct size to accept embryos and to be able to calve normally. And you might want to opt these recipients to be either vaccinated or tested for certain diseases that might interfere with normal pregnancy. If you choose to use cows as a recipient for your embryos, these cows need to be fertile. They need to be in a certain body condition. We recommend that they don't undergo any nutritional changes before and after the embryo transfer. Of course, these animals need to be fed checked as well. They need to be declared healthy, have a clean uterine tract, etc. And again, you might want to opt for these cows to be either vaccinated or tested or declared free of certain diseases. So the embryo transfer itself can be done 7 days after heat. And this heat can be obtained either naturally or certain hormone protocols. The embryo transfer can be done by us, the Vitali team, or you might want to have that done by some of your local embryo transfer teams. So to conclude, so the whole process of IVF has got 3 pillars of success. The first one is donor management, which is a cooperation between you, the farmer, and us, Vitali, and possibly your own local vet. Then the second pillar is the IVF process, which will be happening with us in the lab. And then the third one is the management of your embryo recipients. And this again is a cooperation between you, most likely your local vet, and possibly us as Vitali as well. I will now hand you back over to John. John will be talking to you about our pricing and about how to get started with Vitali IVF.
Thank you, Dieter, and also Carly, thank you very much. As Dieter said, I'd just like to share with you our pricing structure in the UK. As mentioned earlier, Vitali work with an outcome-based pricing structure. And basically, we work to ensure that we minimize the risk to our customers, and we only charge on a per viable grade 1 embryo basis. So that basically means, no embryos, no additional fees. We simply charge with, delivering a viable embryo. The price in the UK will be £200 per embryo. Included in the price will be oocyte collection, oocyte searching and washing, embryo maturation and freezing, and not included will be the semen, which was mentioned earlier, will be provided by the client. And finally, implantation, which could be done by either a Vitali technician or Vitali approved technician, or somebody you also have recommended in your area. So how do you get started working with Vitali in the UK? I think the first step is to select your donors, and that selection criteria is entirely up to you, whatever suits your system, whether it's PLI or whatever criteria you want to select your donors. So once you have a clear indication of which donors you want to work with, you then contact your Vitali sales manager. And at the end of this presentation, there will be contact details for both email and also telephone. So feel free to contact them once you have identified your donors. The next step is to schedule an OPU date to have oocytes collected from your donor animals. So normally, as I say earlier, we will arrive at the farm and work the procedure on farm. So we come to you. So you've had an insight to the Vitali procedures, and there is a Vitali difference that we just wanted to sort of share with you. Vitali do not use hormones or FSH. We are a hormone-free process, which means there's no donor injections required. It's easier on the animal and it's less cost. We have an outcome-based pricing structure with no other hidden fees. You simply pay for a viable embryo. We also have the ability to collect oocytes from the same donor on a weekly basis. And we also are able to collect oocytes from donors up to 120 days pregnant. And finally, our multiple labs across the world are all linked with live lab data systems. So it enables us to monitor our quality control processes or implement any troubleshooting if that happens. So we know at any time that we are maintaining our consistent quality across all our labs within the world. So I'd just like to thank everybody for participating in our Vitali webinar today. We understand we have people from all parts of the UK and 4 continents joining us tonight. So I really appreciate your participation, and we'll now have 15 minutes for questions, and I'll hand over to Danielle, who will start fielding the questions. So on behalf of myself and the Vitali team, thank you very much for participating in the webinar tonight.